we were very specifically Indiana rich. I'm not the type of rich where my parents pay my rent. I'm the type of rich where if I call my parents and I have a flat tire, they can help me. And that's actually not rich.
Alyssa, I have a story for you before we get into our personal political topic.
Please.
The other day, we took a drive that was like a 5-hour drive, right?
Okay.
Because on the way home. And when we stopped at a gas station, I opened the door and there was a fly that had been in my car the whole time.
Oh, my God.
And I was like, I opened the door and the fly flew out. And I was like, oh, my goodness, little guy, you're never going to see your friends or family again. Everyone
because you kidnapped him.
I accidentally kidnapped a fly, and I got so sad. It was like the opening episode of Futurama, where it's like everyone you know is hundreds of miles away. And speaking of friends, the fly will have to make new friends, hopefully gas station friends. I really want to talk about like the idea of rich friends. And in order to talk about having rich friends, I'm going to bring in two of the poorest bitches I know. I'm just kidding. I have no idea how rich or poor you are. First off, LA listeners, don't miss our first panelist at the Dynasty Typewriter on October 22nd for a 90-Day Fiancé tell-all comedy show, Tien Tran.
Hello!
Rounding out the panel today, you can listen to our next panelist on her own podcast, Megan Fun of Sports, best podcast name, truly the best, where she, makes fun of sports. Megan, Gailey, welcome to Hysteria.
Thank you so much.
Well, we are talking kind of about something that dovetails with this a little bit today, and that is when there is a wealth disparity between you and your friends, and more specifically, when your friends are richer than you are. So, Tien, I'm going to start with you. You're in showbiz. Do you have, rich friends? Have you, in different parts of your life, had rich friends? Like, in your mind, you're like, these are my rich friends. And what kind of rich were they?
When I was younger, college, I was definitely, my family was, solidly middle class, but I went to Boston College, and I think that really blew my mind to the term. I had rich friends in college, and one of my friends' dads was a venture capitalist and had so much money, and they had a family house that was on the ocean in a very secluded area in Maine, and we visited there, and I remember being like, oh, this is too much money. I'm like, you can own a part of the coast. You can't. This is way too much. Post-college as well, I was doing comedy and wasn't making a lot of money, and everyone was getting married and having weddings that weren't in the same city as where I was living, which I think should be illegal. And so I honestly actually didn't end up going to a lot of my friends' weddings because of finances. Could not actually pay to get to those weddings. Now being in show business and being, this is my first time on a TV show, I am making more money than I ever have, and it's really blowing my mind a little bit. And trying to figure out what that looks like. I'm at a place now where I'm, go grocery shopping, and I'm like, I will buy the jar of pickles. I'm just I'm thinking about money in a different way and just trying to navigate it. And, I'm on a show with people who have a range of wealth that you may know of. And it's really interesting trying to navigate all of that.
Mm-hmm. You know what? I didn't know you went to BC.
Yes, go Eagles.
I love how sarcastic you sound.
I really tried to.
Megan, same question for you. Do you have rich friends? What kind of rich are they, and how close to the 1%?
So when I was growing up, I thought I was rich. and then I started doing comedy, and I said, well, I'm not. Growing up, I was probably the rich friend, and like my friends were the rich friends, but we were very specifically Indiana rich. And then I went to Purdue, which it does not have a ton of rich people. You know, it's an ag school, but there are super, super rich kids that come there from abroad to be in the engineering program and aeronautical and, you know, all of those things. But I was still sort of in my bubble. But I realized pretty quickly, like, oh, I'm not the type of rich where my parents pay my rent. I'm the type of rich where if I call my parents and I have a flat tire, they can help me. And that's actually not rich. It's lovely, and it's very kind and it's very secure. But I do think getting into show business, as Tien said, is very eye-opening. But I definitely grew up around people that had more money than us, but I always felt tangential to them of like, oh, I'll get the trickle down of like, we don't belong to this country club, but I get to go to the country club and I know the number to put the hot dog on. And so that is like even better. Like it's, what is the saying? It's like, oh, it's like great to have a friend that has a pool or great to have a friend that has a boat, but like you don't want to be the one that owns a boat. And so during post-college, I had so little money and my friends had, you know, regular 9-to-5s and I was waitressing and bartending and I would always be like, I'm going to get you back someday, you know, like I'm going to hit it big and I'm going to, so like, let me use your tampons and then we will go on a yacht. And it's like, I still have not followed through on that, but CJ and I were, you know, lucky enough, and I have to say that too, to be able to be house hunting as of recently, and even just the suggestions people would give of where we should look for homes. Like, oh, you should look in this neighborhood in LA or this neighborhood. And I'm like, there's one neighborhood we can look in. And it's and we can barely look in that one. And so it feels almost like you've made it and you still are so far away. Like I am middle class in Los Angeles, and middle class in Los Angeles is very solid, but you're surrounded by people that have so much more than you. And the generational wealth is so stark and really, I've gotten to the point now where I'm open about being like, nepotism, generational wealth. Yes, I am jealous. Like, I'm not even coming from a place of like, oh, interesting. Like, it's like, I wish that I was generationally rich and I may force my child into being show business just so he can reap the benefits of nepotism that I never was able to. And that's sort of like where I'm at, and you go, you know, I may not be able to live in Los Angeles for the rest of my life because of finances, and that's just not a reality for a lot of the people that we know.
You're gonna have to move somewhere else and drive the home prices up there.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Go to Boise and be like, $600,000 for a 2-bedroom house? This is amazing.
Let's buy 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's really wild. It's really wild.
And you brought up like entertainment and how many people who work in entertainment, like their primary source of income is somebody in their family giving them money. And that enables them to work. Alyssa, I mean, I noticed that when I started working in like media, there are so many writers who their parents co-signed. Like in New York City, you have to make 40 times rent in order to sign a lease, which so like, let's say the average rent, it's like $4,000 a month now in Manhattan. But back then it was like $3,000 a month. In order to sign a lease in Manhattan, you had to make $120,000. And if you didn't make that much money, you could have someone co-sign who made 80 times rent. So I knew so many people who like, I knew for a fact didn't make 40 times rent, who lived by themselves in Manhattan. And so doing a little bit of napkin math, I was like, oh, so your parents make 80 times New York City rent and they co-signed your lease for you. Like that was like very, very stark. But having parents that can do that and having like rich friends who are like, yeah, come and live in my condo really enabled a lot of people in media to get started because there are lean years when you start out. And Alyssa, I know that like the political economy also relies on people who are willing to work for free. Did you notice a lot of that also?
Oh my God. So Tien, I don't know when you were in Brookline at BC, but I lived with 4 BC law students.
Oh my God.
When I started in Brookline, right near, what was that place? Koopel's Bagels?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where I lived.
Oh my God.
And I was so excited to get my job working for John Kerry. And they had to clarify when they offered me the salary that it was $20,500, not $25,000. And so that was, I mean, think about that. There was no way. I had a second job the entire time I lived in Boston. And there's no way, even with the second job, that I could have done it without my parents helping me. 100%.
Well, what do you mean helping you? Like signing leases?
They had to, no, they were like, Alyssa, we're very proud of you that you got this job. Here is a check. You need to make this check last for as long as you work for John Kerry. So it wasn't, because I think only 3 people were supposed to live in the apartment and there were 5. I never had to sign the lease on that one, but I couldn't have afforded, I mean, Tien, again, to the point about college, Brookline rent, even for 5 people in a 3-bedroom, my rent was still like $650 a month.
Yeah, it's expensive.
My entire paycheck that I got, I think, went to my rent, and all of my spending money was my babysitting money and my nannying money.
I feel like I am coming from a place of privilege that I even knew that stand-up comedy was a career that I could pursue. Like, it just, that is privilege in and of itself to go, oh, I'm going to pursue this thing that is free. And I think the arts in general knock a lot of people out financially because it's just, they can't.
Well, and it's kind of great about, I mean, to the point is that, like, when you get into politics, you see so many people who are in politics are really fucking rich because you kind of have to be able to make that kind of money. So the unionization that's happening on Capitol Hill now in some of the congressional offices is very nice to see because, you guys, there's a lot of money in the government, and I feel like we can pay human beings more than $30,000 a year to work 12 hours a day, essentially.
Oh, yeah. It seems almost like, I mean, if you enter a field like media, like politics, like entertainment, like anybody who's trying to be an actor, it sort of fosters this culture of like gadflyism because if you're not somebody that has money, you have to like attach yourself to somebody that has money. And that's the way that you get access to like the ladder itself. Like when I was making, you know, the least amount of money that I ever made as a writer living in New York, I was like crashing at a friend of my boyfriend's house for the first like couple months that we were there. We still, like, the guy who owned Gawker Media, where I worked, was like a rich guy who had a beautiful apartment in Soho across from Balthazar and above the MoMA store. And he would have these big parties. And that was like where you met other people that were like doing the same thing you did. And like, if I had done something to run afoul of him or one of his rich friends, that would have like endangered.
It's a wrap.
Yeah, exactly. Like, do you think that the, I guess the way that people are paid at entry level jobs in entertainment, politics, media, etc., do you think that like enables like rich people to kind of be abusive shitheads?
Yes, I think a lot of times like they don't even know that they're abusive shitheads because their whole life has been so different than ours that it's like, oh yes, there's a staff and they work on Christmas. Of course, they want to be here. Like I remember going to, I had a friend in college who was super, super rich and it came from oil. Okay, so we're talking rich. And I was at their house on Thanksgiving and there was a woman there working who was their housekeeper of some sort. And I'm like, huh. I feel like she'd want to be with someone else on this day, you know? Like, but it's just like, yes, of course, they'll be with us. Like, their world is so, it truly is so different. And I think we get a peek into it and go, what the fuck is going on? But it's their normal.
Yeah, there's like a level of entitlement that I that is like shocking to see.
Describe that. What does that look like?
In different sets that I've worked on and like working with different people and just seeing, where you are on the call sheet, there is like a sense of like, there are some people that I've talked to crew on my set, and I absolutely love them, and they've worked on shows where they'll have like actors literally not make eye contact with them. Or like they'll have someone who is doing hair and makeup and they won't talk to that person. And I'm just like, what happened, or where did that shift happen where you start to like just simply like dehumanize the people around you because you're making more money than them, which is insane because like there would be no Hollywood without the crew. Like they're the hardest working people on sets, and
nobody else, like the writers, the actors, none of us know how to do any of that stuff.
None of us know how to do any of that stuff, and it's the only reason why TV exists. But yeah, that level of entitlement to like, just because you make a certain amount, you can walk into spaces and just not treat people like people. It's
that
really,
they don't even exist.
Yeah, it's very shocking I don't understand it.
And I think it transcends, like, I don't want the listeners to be like, oh, this is like so LA. It really, this is across all industries. I mean, I'm not an avid undercover boss watcher, but I've definitely peeked my eyes on some episodes. And these CEOs who are these are the good ones because they're willing to go on this show at least, are like, this gal is great. And it's like, yeah, your employees are people. Isn't that fascinating? They've got blood and atoms in their body. Like, their minds are so blown of like, they've got 5 kids. It's like, yes, your salary is too fucking much. Yes. Let's spread it out a little bit, my mans.
Yeah, the rich thing I've been thinking about, because I was just, traveling for a couple weeks in California. Yeah. And it really drives home the point that rich is very relative to the place where you are. Like LA, LA rich is like global rich. That's like Dubai rich. That's rich everywhere. But you can go to a place like a small town on the coast, and the person that owns the biggest house might just be someone who bought the house 40 years ago and has been like very responsible and kept it up, and that's just where they live, and they just happen to own the biggest house in town because maybe the town grew up around them. And also, I do this thing where I'll open up Zillow wherever I'm traveling.
Don't do it.
I know, it's so crazy because, people having the biggest house in a lower cost of living area are rich there. But if they try to move to a higher cost of living area, like New York City, I'm trying to think of it, the San Francisco, even Seattle, they would not be rich anymore. They would no longer be the rich friends. I remember the first time I was really aware of how much money people had was when I went off to Notre Dame for my freshman year of college.
It's college because you get out of your bubble.
You get out of your bubble, you're out of your neighborhood, and you get a sense of like, I knew somebody whose parents just like paid for college. She didn't qualify for financial aid, and it was all like need-based at my school. So her parents just wrote a $50,000 check every year, and that was okay. Like, what? It blew my mind that people could like write checks that big. And and sometimes it would be like, we're going to go on a trip. Oh, we're going up to Canada this weekend. Do you want to come with? Or we're going to do this real quick. And the understanding of, oh, I can't do the things that all of you can do. And because I don't have as much money. That was like very, very stark. Megan, I wonder if you have, like, right now, I mean, we're like older and probably a little less awkward around money now. Do you have any friends that are like super rich, and when you hang out with them, what is that like? Like LA rich?
I honestly have cut those people out. No, there's definitely people that are super rich. I also think, like, as I've gotten older, you really, and now it's 100% like our money or whatever, that you realize how differently people want to spend their money. And so I have friends that we maybe have the same sort of finances or in the same place, and they're willing to spend so much on X that I go, I would never. And then they think the way that I spend money is like, like I like to fly first class. And it's like I don't like, it's like, then I'll just not go someplace. Like if it's not a possibility for me to do that, then I'm like, then I'm not going. Because I'm just like, the travel is so terrible that it, like, I need to at least have it be a little less terrible. And I know that that's baffling, but I'm like, oh, thank goodness. I think it's, I recently learned someone close to me that I love is rich.
Oh, it's secret rich.
Not even secret rich. I didn't have my eyes fully open. And they weren't hiding it, but I was like, wow, okay. And then I started like putting the pieces back together and I go, that makes sense now. And then also like, I want this. Like, how do I, like, how can I get them to send me some lobsters? Like kind of like, oh, that makes sense why they've done these kind things for me, but also, I think they could have gotten Conrad a bigger present, like that sort of. I have a friend who got rich overnight too, and we all like knew it, and it's so, it's inspirational to go, wow, this could happen, but it's also like, oh wow, she's kind of leaving us in the dust, and it does, it can create a difficult dynamic, I think, in a relationship, for sure, of like, are they going to pay for everybody, or is it they're gonna pay for more and we're gonna pay what we can? Like, how do you navigate kind of the situation as an adult when it's not parents' money, when it's someone's hard-earned money? I think that's a little bit more sensitive.
Something super interesting that came out earlier this year was analysis of like data around rich friends and poor kids. And this analysis found that if you're a lower income middle class person, having rich friends can actually give you a boost in class mobility, which I found super fascinating. Alyssa, what did you make of that data point?
I mean, it makes sense. Right? It's like if you have a super rich friend, you are probably exposed to different things, you're welcomed into different environments, and you get a sense of what is possible, right? So I think it's like all of us have, I think, example of going to college and realizing that there are some really rich people out there. I mean, growing up, I was in a very, very, very working class town. And I remember my first week, rotten bitch, second floor Chittenden Hall, University of Vermont, was like, Alyssa, who was the richest person in your town? As if I could have never been around a rich person.
They were bullying you?
Yes, because I was such a hick. Well, here's the truth. When she asked the question, I was like, I think it would be the horse doctor. And they were like, what? I was like, the equine vet. I think they had 2 Suburbans. I think they were probably the richest people. And Suburbans back in 92 or whatever were very different than they are now. They were actual like work vehicles. It wasn't until I went to college and even got into politics and was around really, really rich people that I was like, who knew? Who knew these opportunities existed? Some of which you can pursue without being wealthy, but you might not know about because you've never been exposed to them. So I think it's like, I think a great example is something like an internship, so many of which are now paid, but something that in high school, I didn't know what internships were. I didn't know that was an option. And the truth is, by being around people who talked about them because they didn't have to worry about paying for, their life while they were in the internship, I was like, well, I can do that. I can figure it out. And even though my parents did not fork over a big check for me to take an internship, guess what? I was the maitre d' at Lunig's. On Church Street in Burlington. I babysat out in Culver. I don't remember the name of the town. It began with a C. But I figured it out, but the idea of even pursuing it probably wouldn't have occurred to me had I not heard these people for whom it was just a part of their college experience is something they were going to do. So I think that the study rather made good sense to me.
I've seen people attach themselves to rich people for this exact purpose, but then it begs the question is, what if there's no rich people around you? So then you're just left out in the, who do you attach to? The equine doctor? Well, what if you don't know any horses?
Listen, it's not easy. Also, some of those equine people can be very snotty.
Oh, yeah.
The horse people.
Do not
if
fuck
someone
with
likes
horse
horses, you go, cha-ching, I'll attach to you. Thank you.
Oh, I was going to say, if someone likes horses, do not make any jokes about people who like horses around them.
Yeah, don't even
Do
use
not-
glue.
Do not like horse people jokes. That's one of the main things that horse people don't like is jokes about horse people. Have you ever been the rich friend? Have you ever been like, oh, I'm the rich friend, and this is a new thing I'm feeling?
It's a new thing that I'm feeling since being on How I Met Your Father. And I am trying to just return very generous things that friends of mine have been able to, with the study of being, across class. I think I benefited from that because when I first moved to Chicago, I stayed with friends and slept in their couches, crashed on, they were able to pay rent and they didn't make me pay rent. These were some of the sort of trickled down benefits that I had from that. So I'm hoping to return the favor. I'm trying to. And I think, in working in entertainment, you have a lot of friends, and I've been on the receiving end of this generosity of just when your friends make it, there are other people that are still trying to figure it out, and how hard it is to be at that spot where jobs become quiet. And so I am that rich friend to some groups of my friends right now, and I'm getting dinners every now and then. I'm, just trying to kind of pay it forward in the way that people have been so generous to me.
Yeah, I think that is, I guess, the best thing that you can do when you're the rich person is try to be mindful. One thing that I have tried not to be, and I'm in Los Angeles, so I get to live out every single place on the socioeconomic spectrum, depending on what neighborhood I'm living in, but what neighborhood I'm in. But I remember when I was in college or right after college and I didn't have any money and I didn't have any help. I remember how demoralizing and embarrassed I would feel when a rich friend would want to do something and I couldn't do it because of money. The assumption that I could do it was oh, you think I'm rich, but I'm not. It brought up all these feelings of shame and inadequacy when in fact a lot of your economic circumstances are due to factors totally beyond your control. And so now whenever I'm in a situation where I'm, higher income significantly than a person I'm spending time with, I really try to think about whether or not I'm pushing them into that space that I used to hate to go into. Alyssa, you're nodding. I would love to hear your thoughts.
No, I just think that there are lots of good kinds of rich people, right? And they're bad rich people. And the really good rich friends are the ones who fucking take a beat and think about it. And if I am the rich friend in an instant and I want to do something and I want that person to come with me and do it with me, it's you know what? I want to go see Stevie Nicks. The tickets are ridiculous. I got you one. It's an early birthday present. You do something that makes them not feel less than and just include them in the experience that you want to have. And I just think that assuming it's if you really want to do something, I just think that there was no worse feeling than when people would be oh, hey, we're all going to Barbados. Do you want to come? And it's in what fucking world do you think I can afford to go to fucking Barbados at age 22? Do you know what I mean? It was almost fantastical. It made me think less of them. I was shouldn't you be saving your money? That's what my parents told me I should be doing. But, it's to me, as an adult, I have some really fucking rich friends. And the best one, my all-time fave, I saw how much she had told me how much she was making at her job, but it was reported in the Financial Times. And I just sent her a note and I was for the record, to avoid any confusion going forward, dinner shall always be on you, but your jam will always be free. And she just like laughed, but then there are the people who, ask you to do something beyond your means and you think it's important to them, so you do it. And then you show up and the asshole is like, do you know this outfit was like 30 grand? And all I can think is, one, I'm never doing anything for you again. And second, do you know how many people you could have fed with your fucking stupid outfit? And so I just think too, like having the rich friends that support good causes and are very helpful to people when they can be helpful. And it's not the rich friend's responsibility to always pay, but I think it is the person's responsibility to know the environment they're creating and to make sure that if you're really their friend, they're making you feel comfortable and in the environment.
And also, there may come a day that you need to eat them.
Yes. It's entirely possible.
Dinner is on you.
Yes.
And also possibly one day dinner is
It might
you.
be you.
I do think there are people that it does make them uncomfortable to have people pay for them, though. Like, I have encountered people where it's like, oh, and I'm not one of them. So I can't understand the psyche.
But can I ask you a question? Do you think it's because of how it is offered? Do you know what I mean? Do you think it is because the person gives them the look like I
a
know
pity,
you're poorer
the pity
than me,
look?
so I got it.
I think it absolutely could be. I think it also could just be, it maybe like confirms the self-consciousness they've been feeling of like, oh, I'm not in the place I want to be, and now I'm taking, we've all heard the handout. I don't want a handout, and it's like, oh, my hand is out and I will take anything, thank you. I'm constantly asking for free things, but it's just, but it may just, I think it could also be people's upbringing too, of like, it's been pounded into them, like, do not take, nothing is free. That sort of like, you're always going to have to be owed something. They're going to want something from you. And I know women especially have been told that about interactions with male counterparts too.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And it's a complicated space to navigate. We'll put it that way. That is about all the time we have for this rich friends conversation. Hopefully the next time we talk, all of you will have yachts and you will invite me onto them. And if I have a yacht, you will be invited onto mine. I can't imagine ever buying a yacht. This seems like a waste of money. But regardless, you can come to my, pool deck. How about that if I become the rich friend?